was a latent delta P hazard identified as a risk?
Reviewed and accepted rather than approved.
Accepted.
Thanks. As far as I can remember, delta P was never mentioned.
Delta P was never mentioned. Before this accident occurred, in respect of latent delta P hazard, would I be correct to say that you did not consider that these works would have had an active delta P situation?
You would be correct. The contractor LMCS did not raise delta P to us as a potential risk, and that is correct. I did not consider it.
Do you consider that persons in your department had the necessary qualifications and experience to identify a delta P hazard situation?
No. I could explain a little bit more?
Yes.
Okay, so the HSE department within PARIA, we work within the oil and gas industry. And the risks and the hazards and threats that we are more accustomed with would be related to oil and gas. So for diving activity, it would not be normal unless somebody has worked somewhere else before from in that industry and is working with us. It would not be normal for someone to have that knowledge or that competence or certification. And that is the case.
And that is the case. So would it be correct to say that as far as you were concerned in that department, you never envisaged that any time that PARIA was doing these works, this kind of works, there would have been a delta P hazard?
That is correct. For this type of work, we never considered that as a risk. It was never introduced to us. At least I could say I did not think about it.
You did not think about it.
That is a fact.
And as far as, how long are you with PARIA?
Its inception in December 2018.
18.
Yeah, so it's 4 years now.
And as far as you are concerned, from what you know, PARIA didn't consider that, or your department didn't?
I really don't know if I can answer that question.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Mr. Paul Yearwood, who is one of your officers.
Yes, he works with me, yeah.
He told us in his evidence that at paragraph 7 of his witness statement at page 1301, I'll read it to you. He said that PARIA did not have the competence and experience to execute these works.
Paragraph 7?
Yes. Last three lines. Because the works which were to be executed by LMCS were highly specialized in nature and were not of a kind which PARIA had the competence or experience to execute. And PARIA necessarily relied on the specialist expertise of contractors such as LMCS.
Okay, I see it.
Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
I would agree.
You would agree?
Yeah.
Something that has troubled me in this matter a lot, and I wonder if you could help me. If PARIA did not have the competence and experience to execute these works, how could PARIA have reviewed these documents from LMCS to accept them, to give the go-ahead to do these works?
Okay. How could PARIA have done that?
Yes. If, for example, you and your department do not have the skill, the experience, the competence to review and assess the works, for the works to proceed. And your officers have been saying, and PARIA has been saying, it did not have that experience and competence. But yet it is asking to review the works with its staff and give the go-ahead to do the works. How it makes me feel that something is not right.
Okay. So,
am I wrong?
but let me give the answer.
Yes.
And the decision of whether you're right or wrong would still be up for you to decide. The risks appear in two basic areas, two basic forms: functional risks or situational risks. Situational being geographic or the condition. So the functional risks are related to the job. So for example, if a contractor is building scaffolding in PARIA, and he builds it in Port of Spain or wherever, it's his function. He has the functional risks associated with the job. So he's the expert, and he understands those risks. The situational risk or the geographic risks belong to PARIA. That's our facility. We understand those risks. So when we hire a contractor, he brings to us the functional risks associated with the job. He is the expert. He is doing the job. So he tells us, this is my method of doing the job, and these are the risks associated with the job. And then we say to him, well, this is our facility, and these are the risks associated with our facility. And the two are supposed to come together for the job to be executed safely. So in doing the risk assessment review, or the JHA review as in this particular case, our role was to introduce or inform the contractor, these are the facility risks. We have oil and we have hydrocarbon here, and this is the depth and that sort of thing. These are the activities that we have taking place at this point in time. And we inform him of that. We also are informed of the functional risks associated with the job by him. And we are also informed of the controls that he intends to implement to manage those risks. And to a certain extent as well, once we are able to, if there are any risks that are obvious to us, that relates to his job function, and it often happens that we are able to, we introduce that to him as well if he missed out on those.
But Mr. Archibald, the functional risks must be associated with the situational risk, because the situational risk is at PARIA. The site is at PARIA. The works are being done at PARIA. PARIA is the site authority. So the functional risks are connected with the situational risk. So if you're assessing risks, you would be assessing risks in order to determine whether an accident can occur, people can get injured, or people can die. So if you're assessing risks for works to go ahead on PARIA site, you want to ensure that these works can go ahead safely without any injury or death to anyone. Am I not correct?
That is exactly it. And I want to say again that the contractor brings to PARIA, in the case of a specialist contractor, the functional risks that we may not be aware of, and the company, PARIA, brings to the contractor the facility risks. So they come together to be able to get the job done safely.
But PARIA is authorizing works which, if done and proper risks are not considered, can cause the death or injury to individuals. Without PARIA approving those documents, the works wouldn't happen. So did PARIA consider that it had a duty of care? Did you, in doing this, did you consider you had a duty of care to ensure that the risks were properly assessed?
PARIA has a duty of care as the occupier, the owner of the facility. There's a requirement under the OSH Act to do certain things. The employer, which is LMCS in this case, has a responsibility to provide a suitable and sufficient risk assessment for the activities. The occupier is informed by the employer about the functional risks.
So, Mr. Ashwell, are you telling us, I just want to understand it, are you telling us that as far as PARIA was concerned in doing this review and assessment, PARIA did not have a duty to ensure that the works which were being done and being authorized by PARIA were done safely and done in a way in which no one would get injured and no one can die?
I would say, in my opinion, that PARIA should ensure, so far as is reasonably practicable, that the risks are presented and mitigated.
Just a minute.
I want to take him to the permit rules. What you want me to take him to?
Towards the OSHA's criticism of this.
Yeah. I know. You had an input in the permit to work rules, not so?
Yes, sir.
And you're very familiar with them.
Yes.
The applicant for this job was PARIA.
For the job with the hyperbaric chamber, the applicant was Mr. Houston Majad Singh, a Kenson employee contracted by PARIA.
Majad
A
Singh.
representative of PARIA, yes.
So Mr. Majad Singh was representing PARIA.
Yes, sir.
So in substance, PARIA was the applicant. LMCS was not the applicant.
LMCS was not the applicant.
Who was the applicant?
Houston Majad Singh was the applicant.
All right. So he was the applicant representing PARIA.
Yes, sir.
Right. I want to take you to the rules. It's at volume 1 of the core bundle, page 28.
Thank you.
Now, the applicant is Mr. Majad Singh representing PARIA. And look at 5.1 on page 28.
Yes.
The applicant, that is Mr. Majad Singh representing PARIA, must have the necessary competence to execute the job or to supervise the execution of the job. So these rules envisage that either Mr. Majad Singh representing PARIA would have the competence to execute the job or to supervise the execution of the job.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
But you have told us that PARIA didn't have that competence.
That PARIA, yeah, I told you I agree with
Remember,
Paul's statement that
yes.
PARIA did not have the competence
Right.
to execute the job. May I explain?
PARIA did not have the competence to execute the job. Did it have the competence to supervise the execution of the job?
In the opinion of the technical and maintenance department, yes.
Yes. So
Because they put Mr. Majad Singh, they assigned him to supervise the execution of the job.
So you are saying then that Mr. Majad Singh had the competence to supervise the execution of these works?
I think that might be implied, but I didn't say that.
Okay. So let me ask you specifically.
Let's be clear, please. We don't need implication. You're here. You can tell us what you understand the position to be.
Right. The Technical and Maintenance Department assigned Mr. Majad Singh to supervise the execution of the job.
What does that mean? Sorry, what does that mean? They assigned him, Mr. Majad Singh, to do the job. What does that mean?
To supervise the execution of the job?
Yes.
They put him in charge of being the applicant. And the duties and the roles of the applicant are outlined in 5.1.
Can we take it from that they would not have appointed him if they did not believe he was capable of supervising the execution of the job?
I could assume that, yes.
Has there been a review since this has happened?
Of,
Whether he was capable of supervising the execution of the job?
I'm not certain.
Well, I don't know what that means. I'm not certain. You're the HSE head, aren't you, at PARIA? Has there been a review since this happened as to whether Mr. Majad Singh was someone capable of supervising the execution of the job?
The PARIA did an investigation.
No, I am familiar with that, but I want to know from you, as the head of the HSE, whether, look, whoever's responsible, whether there's nobody responsible, something went wrong, because 4 people died, right? So I'm assuming you, as head of HSE, would want to ensure that whatever the position is, it doesn't happen again, and that the personnel who were in charge or responsible for the undertaking of these works were the right people to do it. So has there been a review, to your knowledge, of whether Mr. Majad Singh was capable of supervising the execution of the job?
Of this job?
Yes,
No.
this job.
As far as I'm aware, no review was done for Mr. Majad Singh, on Mr. Majad Singh, whether he was capable of executing this past job.
Right, so if there was another job similar to this, he might be reappointed.
The review might be done.
Well, a bit late then, isn't it?
The job would be different. If it's the same exact job, we have other things in place now to address doing a job like this.
Well, we'll turn to those in due course, I'm
Yeah.
sure. But, all right, but as far as you're aware, no review has been conducted by PARIA as to whether or not the man who was to supervise the execution of the work was fit to do so.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Archwell, I want to give you an opportunity. Are you telling this commission that as the person, as the lead of this department in PARIA, are you telling this commission today that Mr. Majad Singh had the specialist knowledge to supervise this job?
I would like to explain.
But it's a simple question, but you could give me the answer and then explain.
Okay. Again,
The question
he
is,
was assigned by the Technical and Maintenance Department to be the applicant on this job, which is to supervise the execution of the job.
okay,
Is the answer yes, then?
The question was whether, in my opinion, he is,
whether in your opinion he has the specialist knowledge to be given that duty to supervise this job.
for the diving aspect of the job,
No, I'm talking about the works.
the works. No, I would say that Mr. Majad Singh, there are some aspects of this job that was out of his ability to be able to supervise.
Well, what aspect of the job it was not out of his ability?
The aspect of the delta P hazard.
The Delta P hazard.
That's right. I am of the opinion, I believe that Mr. Majad Singh, and I don't know for sure, that he did not know about delta P.
So when he was made by PARIA, the applicant for these works on the date that this accident happened, according to you, he should not have been the applicant. On the permit.
Yeah, I think I can agree that for some aspects of the job, that he should not have been the applicant, and the reason for that was that the delta P hazard was not something that he would have been knowledgeable of.
You know that this accident happened on the 25th of February, not so?
Yes, sir.
And on the 25th of February is when they had the incident with the plugs being pulled out.
Yes.
And the delta P occurred, right? You know that in respect of those works on that day, Mr. Majad Singh was the applicant.
Yes.
So are you telling us that Mr. Majad Singh should not have been the applicant for these works on that day?
I think I answered that just now, but just to be clear, there are some aspects of this job that Mr. Majad Singh would not have had the competence to not have knowledge of the hazards. And the more appropriate thing to have done would have been to split the permit so that Mr. Majad Singh would be the applicant for several aspects of the job and keep the area that's dealt specifically with the delta P hazard under the contractor.
Under the contractor with no representative from PARIA. Did PARIA have anybody else than Mr. Majad Singh to be the applicant for this job?
No. In circumstances like this, for example, the diving job, LMCS personnel were the applicant. LMCS was the applicant in that case.
For the diving
job? For the diving job.
On the 25th?
That's right. So, for example, Andrew Farah was the applicant. So he was the one supervising the diving activity at that time. Mr. Majad Singh was the applicant for the hyperbaric works.
Yes, and the hyperbaric works. The hyperbaric works in the chamber, there's where the accident occurred.
And the hyperbaric works that I was referring to that he was the applicant for, which is where his knowledge and competence is supervising the execution of the pressure testing as well as the installation of the flange.
And whatever works were to be done on that day, he was to supervise it. In other words, he was to supervise the works which were to be done in the hyperbaric chamber.
He was to supervise the execution of the works outlined in the permit.
Yeah.
There was another job taking place for which he did not have the competence, and the LMCS was the applicant for that.
Mr. Majad Singh, in his witness statement to this commission, and I'm referring to page 3049, volume of the Supplemental Witness Statement Bundle, and particularly at paragraph 15 of his witness statement, said, as a maintenance technician, I only know of work relative to my field. I did not have specialist knowledge about the job LMCS was doing. He didn't say part of the job. The job LMCS was doing. He did not have the specialist knowledge about the job LMC was doing. Do you agree with his statement?
Some of the activities. Oh, you want me to answer first?
Answer first, please. Do you agree with his statement?
I don't know what he meant. I could tell you what I know.
So you disagree with his statement?
I cannot agree or disagree.
Well, hang on a minute. Who is he?
Sorry?
Marjad Singh, who is he?
He works with PARIA through Kenson.
Right.
And
You've been there 4 years.
Yeah.
How long has he been there?
I'm not sure.
Right. Longer than you?
No.
No. All right. You knew who he was?
Yes.
You knew his competencies?
No.
You didn't know his competencies?
No.
You were content for him to sign a work permit for these, what can only be regarded as hazardous works to be done, and yet you didn't know his competencies?
No, the technical and maintenance department, according to the permit to work process, as well as the hiring process.
I follow that, but you're in charge of safety, health and safety at this site and for these works. That's your job. You're the top man. Buck stops with you, with health and safety, doesn't it?
Yes.
Right. And you're saying that you were content for Mr. Marjad Singh to sign off as the applicant for this work permit,
Yes.
doing these hazardous works without knowing his competencies.
I accepted the assessment by the technical and maintenance department and was satisfied with it.
Right. Do you think, on reflection, it would be sensible for you to know his competencies?
Yes, there is a built-in review process now taking
Now.
place. Yeah.
Built-in review process as a result of this incident?
It started before. There was another incident last year that we have been looking at.
Yeah, so we. But what I want to know really is whether or not this new process involves you knowing the applicant's competencies before agreeing to him being an applicant.
Yeah, the applicant's competencies with respect to being an applicant, that process is in place, and I could confidently say that I am satisfied with his competence.
Now,
For being an applicant before the job, his competencies with respect to him executing his activities under technical and maintenance, that was not part of an HSE review. There are two things. One is being an employee of the technical and maintenance department to be able to execute or supervise the execution. The other is his competency as an applicant in the permit to work procedure.
yeah, but the applicant has to be able to supervise the execution of the job,
Yes.
doesn't he?
Yes.
So all I'm asking you is whether or not you knew of his competencies before agreeing to him being an applicant, which involved supervising the execution of the job, and you told me you didn't.
No, that would I answered. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I answered with respect to his competencies as an employee on the technical and maintenance department. With respect to the permit to work system, we have a process in place.
Forgive me, we're at cross purposes, right? I want to be clear about that. I'm not undermining his ability as an employee of the firm. I'm assuming if he was a decent employee, they'd be keeping him on. If he was no good, they'd have got rid of him. But the fact is that he, in this context, in this matter that we're considering, is the applicant. The applicant has a responsibility to supervise the execution of the work. And I'm asking you whether or not you were satisfied as to his competencies to be an applicant in this and therefore supervise the execution of the work.
Yes.
Right. Are you satisfied that he did have such competencies?
Yes.
Even though you've identified to Mr. Maharaj that there are certain areas of his ability that clearly he couldn't supervise.
Which is the diving.
Just the diving.
Well, as far as I could remember, the pressure testing and the mechanical works, those fall within his competence.
Right. So, and you were satisfied from your own knowledge that he was capable of doing that?
Yes.
Right. But you're satisfied that the diving aspect of it was not something within his...
Correct.
Right. And does it follow from that that therefore there was no adequate supervision of that aspect of the job?
Well, that is why we have a different permit for the
Right.
diving aspect.
Okay.
And we asked LMCS to be the applicant for that permit.
Well, we can see that at page 1072. of the Core Bundle, Volume 3. It says here to carry out diving activities, specific tasks to carry out diving activities to assist with the maintenance work.
Yes.
Yeah? So this is the work permit for that. And if we go to the bottom, please, you can tell me the applicant there is a squiggle. I'm assuming that that's Mr. Farah.
Yes.
Yes?
Well, I know.
That's Farah. Look
It
like
is.
Farah.
Okay, thanks.
That's Farah.
Yeah, I thought it was Farah. I just don't recognize his signature.
Well, I have no idea what his signature looks like, but assuming that that is Mr. Farah's signature, so he is the applicant in this particular instance.
Yes.
Right. So he is responsible for the diving part of it.
Yes, sir.
Right. And then we move on 2 pages to 1074. So that's the work permit for the works to be done.
To remove and install the 50-inch flange, that would fall under Houston Majad Singh's competence. To remove and install the 30-inch riser pipe, that too would fall under his competence. To remove the 30-inch solid blank, conduct pressure tests on the flange weld, remove the chamber and blank the top of the new riser. Yes, all of those would fall under his competence.
So you'd be satisfied that he would be an appropriate applicant for that,
Yes,
that
sir.
part of the work. All right. And therefore he is the applicant at the bottom. We can look to the bottom of the page, please. We can see he is the applicant. All right. So you're able to assure us that he would have been more than competent, or competent at least, to be able to supervise those aspects of the job.
Yes, I am confident.
Right. Thank you. That helps me considerably, because the previous work permit deals with the diving aspect.
Yes,
And this part deals with the actual works to be carried
that's
out.
right.
Now, there is inevitably a crossover between the two,
Yes.
isn't there? And is it anticipated that in the crossover between the two, Mr. Marjad Singh would be liaising with Mr. Farah?
Yes, yes, it would be. That's right.
You would expect that.
I would expect that.
Right. And just so that I'm clear about this, Mr. Marjad Singh's responsibility to supervise the execution of the work would include that which is identified on page 1074. Scroll back up a bit, please. Thank you. Where it says, keep going. That's it. Stop. That's it. You see where it says, cleared of process hazardous materials. Do you see that?
Yes,
And then it says, yes, migration barrier to be used.
yes,
Right? Now, we've been told that the migration barrier is to be used in order to preserve the good air in the chamber and to prevent anything falling into the pipe.
yes,
I summarize what we've been told, but that's
Yes.
the essence of it, because delta P had not been identified, all right?
that is correct.
So the purpose of the migration barrier there was to preserve the good health of those working in the chamber.
Yes.
And the integrity of the pipe. Now, is Mr. Marjad Singh...
And the integrity of the pipe?
Yeah, nothing falling into it.
Oh, yes. Well, it's not for the integrity of the pipe, I suppose, but it is for inclusive of people as well.
Well, obviously it's inclusive of people, but I mean, when I say the integrity of the pipe, I mean that there shouldn't be foreign bodies in it other than the oil that it was intended to carry.
Yes.
Right. So given that that's the purpose, can we take it that Mr. Marjad Singh would have prevented, had he known, the removal of the migration barrier at all?
Yes, he would have known that because it's on the permit as a control.
And
And
that's
he would
something you were
have, if he
content
had
with?
known that they were going to remove it, he would have intervened.
Right. Well, what it amounts to is this. You're content that Mr. Marjad Singh was competent enough to know that the removal of the migration barrier would be something that should not happen.
Yes.
And if he were supervising the job, as he was required to do in the execution of that work, had he seen it or been told of it or in some other way come to know that the migration barriers were to be removed, he would have stopped it or should have stopped it.
Yes, I believe that if anybody had told Houston that they were going to remove the migration barrier, or if somehow he were able to see, then he would have stopped it. I believe that.
Well, the somehow that he would have been able to see is a camera, isn't it?
Yes, well, I don't know if he would have been able to see from the camera. I'm not certain because the migration barrier is a couple feet below.
Yeah, a few feet below.
So I don't know if the camera sees the migration barrier.
But if he's monitoring the work, we've heard varying evidence as to how long this migration barrier would have taken to be removed,
Okay.
the two barriers.
Okay.
If he's monitoring the work or supervising it as it's described in your document, one would have thought that it would have been pretty obvious that somebody's putting a great big tool down inside the pipe in order to remove it.
Well, he is required to monitor. It's not, he's not required to be there 100% of the time.
No, I follow that. What
the-
would you say would be the appropriate period of time for him to have an eye on it, or what would be an inappropriate period of time to have not had an eye on it? You follow what I mean?
Well, let me describe the situation.
No. You help me first with that, then you can describe the situation, right? You help me with what you
Okay.
think supervising the execution of the job involves by way of a time associated with it. So, obviously he can nip off to go to the loo, have a cup of coffee maybe, attend to one or two other things, but would you expect him to be away for an hour or half an hour?
In this particular
15 minutes?
instance, I would say within maybe every 2 hours he should visit.
Right, I see. So you would be content as the head of health and safety for Mr. Houston Marjad Singh to keep an eye on it every couple of hours?
Yes, can I explain?
You can in a moment, and I will let you explain. But that in an ordinary working day, would that amount to 3 or 4 visits?
Yes.
And you think that's adequate, do you? In a job which on any view is described as hazardous, dangerous, and unusual. You think that's sufficient, do you?
For the specific situation here, yes.
All right, good. Now you can explain why.
Okay. Mr. Marjad Singh was handling the job on berth 5 in addition to berth 6. The diving aspect of the job, which was being supervised by Andrew Farah, and according to Andrew Farah's dive plan that was submitted in the contract, he stated in the dive plan that the line, the pipeline, must be double plugged in order to prevent any chemical contaminants from affecting the people in the hyperbaric chamber. Mr. Marjad Singh was aware that Andrew Farah was supervising this activity 100% of the time. It is a contractor HSE requirement for the contractor supervisor to be there 100% of the time. Based on that requirement, I would say that Mr. Marjad Singh's visit need not be as frequent as every hour, and possibly maybe even 2 hours might be sufficient. However, in this particular instance, it is almost irrelevant how frequently he should have visited, because when they broke for lunch was when the plugs were removed.
When they resume work after lunch.
PARIA did not know that they resumed work.
Why not?
We were not informed.
No, you mean Mr. Majid Singh was on his 2-hour break or doing something else?
I don't know if he was on a 2-hour break.
All right. So you're saying, as far as you're aware, that when the work resumed after lunch by LMCS, you, PARIA, were wholly unaware of the resumption of that work?
Yeah. At least that is the evidence from Dobson. When
we've had the
Dobson
evidence,
left,
Mr. Dobson.
Well,
yeah.
all right.
We've had his evidence.
We had his evidence.
Okay,
We'll
but
make
that's
our-
what he told me.
Well, all right. I am conscious of what you're saying, but I do need to understand, because it seems to me quite important. You regarded supervision of the execution of the work every couple of hours as being sufficient.
In this particular instance,
in this instance,
with the fact that Mr. Farah was supervising 100% of the time, and that Mr. Farah himself knew that the 2 plugs should have been inside there,
Well,
I think it's reasonable to expect that Mr. Farah would not have supervised them removing the plugs.
Yes. You say Mr. Farah knew that the plugs should not be removed. Where do you get that from?
In the tender documents, there's a document called a dive plan,
Yes.
that in it he has that the 2 plugs should be in the line to protect the men from chemical contamination.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Majid Singh, with the greatest respect to you, on the permit,
He's not Majid Singh.
sorry, Mr. Archibald, much obliged. Mr. Archibald, with the greatest respect to you, on the permit to work that Mr. Majid Singh was the applicant,
Yes, sir.
in his supervision of those works,
Yes.
according to you, he had to ensure that the migration barrier was used, correct?
According to the permit to work document,
Does it show migration barrier to be
that's
used?
right.
So he had to, that is one of the part of the job he's supposed to supervise.
You asked me if he has to ensure,
But is that what he had to supervise?
among other things, he was responsible for that, to supervise the execution of the job, and that is one of the controls. But as I said earlier, I don't know if he could have seen the plug.
Well, whose duty it was to ensure that if PARIA had to supervise the works, that the supervisor would be able to see what was going on? Was that LMCS duty or PARIA's duty? If PARIA had to supervise the works, and Mr. Majid Singh was its agent to supervise the works, whose duty it was to ensure that Mr. Majid Singh would be in a position to supervise the works?
I want to come back to this work permit to answer the question.
Well, would you answer the question first?
Whose duty was it to supervise this
Whose
permit that
duty
is
it
on the
was to
screen?
ensure that Mr. Majid Singh would be in a position to supervise the works, that he would be able to see what was happening?
I think you're asking who I just want to make sure that I get the question correct.
Do you consider it was PARIA's duty to ensure that Mr. Majid Singh would have been able to see what was happening in order to supervise the works?
The diving aspect of the job was not
I'm not talking about the diving
under...
aspect. I'm talking about the works on this work permit. I know what you want to say, Mr. Archibald, but I'm talking about the works on this work permit.
I don't even know what he wants to, what he wants to say, but could my learned colleague allow the witness to answer the question? And the witness was going to use a document to assist him in answering the question, which all witnesses ought to be allowed to do in all proceedings.
Of course, that's right. I think Mr. Maharaj was trying to get an answer to the question, which something I've been engaged with many witnesses. Answer the question first, and you'll be given the opportunity to add whatever you want to afterwards. But if you can answer the question, sometimes, most times, it can be answered with a yes or no. But, or however, I will always permit the but or however, unless it's flippant, I'll permit that. So if you can answer the question asked by Mr. Maharaj, answer the question with a yes or no, and if there is a rider to add to it, I'll have no difficulty with you adding that rider. You want to explain why you're saying yes or why you're saying no. All right?
Right.
So can we, so that we get where we are,
Yeah.
Mr. Maharaj will ask the question again. You'll
question.
answer it, and then if there's a rider to be added, you'll be permitted to do so.
Thanks.
all right?
I'm just having a little challenge with the length of the question, maybe. So
Okay, I'll
let's
try and
go.
shorten it
Let's
for
go
you.
again.
Oh dear.
I'll try and shorten it for you. Okay. Did you consider that it was PARIA's duty to ensure that Mr. Majad Singh, as the supervisor, would have been able to see the works while it was being done in order to discharge his duty?
Which works?
The works described on the work permit, migration barrier to be used.
In this case, no.
In this case, no.
In this case,
Do you want to
no.
explain why?
Okay. For example, the installation of the 30-inch riser pipe has to be done inside of the chamber. And I don't know if it would have been possible for him to have been able to see that.
Well, we know that it is.
Sorry?
We know that it would have been. We've seen video footage inside the chamber from the original camera that was located inside the chamber. And if they were putting a riser on, we'd have seen it.
Okay.
So we know that that is the case. You could see, certainly could see a riser being put on. I accept immediately, I don't think you'd have been able to see the plugs at all looking into the chamber as it stands. So take it from me, that what we've seen so far, and on the evidence that we've heard so far, you would not be able to see the actual plugs themselves in the pipe, but you would be able to see the riser, you'd have been able to see the flange being put on it, you'd have been able to see the new riser being attached to that flange, all of that you'd been able to see.
Okay, so because of the use of the camera.
Because of the camera, yes.
Okay, so PARIA did make it possible to be able to see, and the question is whether Mr. Majad Singh should have been watching all of the time.
No, that's not the question. Nobody says he should be there 100% of the time.
Okay, well,
The question is whether there was a duty for PARIA to ensure that Mr. Majad Singh could carry out his job,
yes.
which was to supervise the execution of the job.
Right. So then the presence of the camera would have made it possible, yes.
So you would
No,
agree?
no, that doesn't answer the question. What, did you regard it as PARIA's duty to ensure that he could see sufficient to be able to carry out his job? Was it your duty, your company's duty?
Yes.
Right, thank you. Right,
Yes.
if you want to, like I've said before, to you and others, if you want to add anything to it, you're more than welcome to do so. If you want to refer to a document, you're more than welcome to do so. But it helps me, and no doubt the questioner, if you answer the question with a yes or no, where that is possible. And here it is, clearly. So yes is the answer.
Thank
it was
you.
their duty.
Yeah.
And if you want to add anything, feel free.
So if he was in a position to see, as you say, right? If the migration barrier was not being used in his duty to supervise the job, he would have seen it.
We have just jumped from one work permit to the other.
From one work permit to another?
But the answer that I gave was with respect to the work permit that is on the screen.
Yes, so
Well, now you're talking about the migration barrier.
the permit on the screen is the migration barrier to
Yes.
be used.
Well, I mean, the diving, if I may say so, has got nothing to do with the migration barrier. The migration barrier is in order to carry out these works. The diving is in order to get into the habitat in order to carry out the works. The diving, certificate that we've looked at, I pointed it out to you so you could see it, so that no one could suggest for a minute that you were being in any way misled, all right? I pointed it out to you. That's got nothing whatever to do, can I suggest, with the migration barrier. If I'm wrong about that, please tell me, because I am proceeding on the basis, and have done for the last few weeks, on the basis that the migration barrier is there in order to carry out the very works that are set out in that work permit.
Yes, the migration barrier is there to set out the works.
You don't need to be a diver to be able to put the migration barrier in.
I don't know that if it was necessary for him to be able to see the migration barrier
Nobody's talking about
because...
that. I accept that. I said to you less than 2 minutes ago, you could not see, unless you were in it, in the chamber itself, you could not see those migration barriers. I accept that completely. So the question is related to this work permit, nothing to do with diving. So we're not jumping from one to the other. If that was happening, I'd stop it.
Okay, so let's say the question.
So the question is that if the migration barrier was not being used and he was supervising the works,
I don't understand what you mean by if it was not being used.
well, on the work permit, it says migration barrier to be used.
Yes.
So if that was being contravened, that is to say, the migration barrier was not being used, it was being removed.
Okay. So if the migration barrier was being removed,
He would have, and he was supervising the works,
and he could have seen it,
and he would have been able to see it.
if he was watching at that point in time,
Yes.
he
Yes.
would have been able to see that something was being done, but he would not have been able to see until it came out, would it?
But he would see that it is being removed.
Well, he would see that there was some activity of men looking down into a pipe.
And
I still don't think that the migration barrier could have been seen from the camera. So if men are looking down into the pipe, at the only point in time that he would know that it's being removed is after it has been removed. I don't know if...
Forgive me. Look, I think we're going round and round in circles here. There is no question that the camera inside the hyperbaric chamber did not show the actual barriers themselves. There are two, correct?
Correct.
The fact that there may have been one or two men around the top of the pipe with a T-bar that I understand to be something in the order of a couple or 3 feet long and a T coming across, being placed inside that chamber and being turned would have been obvious to anybody looking inside the chamber, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Well, there couldn't have been any other reason for putting such a bar inside the pipe, could there? Could there?
That was used to remove it?
It's the only way you can remove it, as I understand it. Someone tell me if
No,
that's wrong.
that was used to install it because of the height of the spool. And it would have been used to remove it after the new spool was put in. So
Correct.
I don't think that they used... Is that the evidence?
Well, I've understood it to be used as a smaller T-bar was being used and that a longer one was necessary in the event that the pipe was refitted. That it was necessary to use it. But even if I'm wrong about that, I mean, they're taking spanners and leaning inside and using a spanner to open it. Now, I appreciate you might not have seen the spanner, but what else could they be doing?
I agree. I agree.
Right, so whether they're using a T-bar or a spanner or whatever it is, right? There's one or more men reaching inside this pipe, and it's not something that takes just 2 minutes. It takes a bit of time. From what I've seen, there is 15 or 16 bolts to be removed, presumably not easily.
Yeah.
So, all we're trying to establish, please, all I'm trying to understand, Mr. Archbold, is that, and I hear what you say, 2 hours might be the appropriate time as far as you're concerned. But anybody who was watching inside that hyperbaric chamber by virtue of a camera would have appreciated that the barrier was the first barrier was being removed. Couldn't have been missed. And someone with Mr. Marjad Singh's experience would have immediately understood that, surely.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
He could have assumed that.
Yes. So, or at least said, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Now, what are you doing? So let's assume that that's where we are, okay? Now, of course, it seems apparent that Mr. Marjad Singh either wasn't looking, or if he was looking, didn't understand it. And so,
But Mr. Marjad Singh was not there.
no, it was not there, quite.
They broke for lunch,
Yes, I understand.
and they came back early.
About how early, but anyway, the fact is Mr. Marjad Singh did not observe what was happening. Had someone been observing, they would have recognised it.
But Mr. Farah was observing.
Yes, all right. He didn't think there was anything wrong with it, see?
Yeah, and Mr. Ali was observing too.
Well, some of the time, yes. He dived down to provide them with a spanner to do it. Didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they clearly thought there was nothing wrong with taking it out. Didn't they? Must have done.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Mr. Ashwell, I want to show you 1072, the work permit that you are relying on.
Can I ask you to find an appropriate moment to break for lunch?
Yeah, just after this. Okay, just after. At page 1072 of the same volume 3.
Yes, sir.
That is the one that what Mr. Farah with the dive-in work permit, right?
Yes.
Nothing there had to do with migration barrier. Nothing there. I want you to look at it.
Okay. Yes,
Okay?
sir.
All right. And the works which were being done,
Is there a question?
sorry?
Is there a question?
Yeah, the question is that there is nothing on that work permit had to do with migration barrier.
No, that's a statement.
Sorry?
So
I think he's looking for you to agree to that statement.
Okay,
all right?
okay. So I agree with you, but the dive plan says that the double plugs must be in the pipeline.
Okay, well, I'm talking about the work permit.
But
Okay?
the work permit is for diving, and a dive plan is for diving.
But I am talking about the subsea maintenance works, the offshore subsea maintenance works.
So am I.
Yes, okay.
I don't understand if you don't understand.
Okay, Mr. Ashwell, after lunch, when we come back, I will show you some more things, and probably you could help us more, all right?
Okay.
In the meantime, I will ask you to look at the OSHA report, which mentioned your name. Okay? Okay then.
Now?
No, during the lunch period.
I think he's suggesting you might want to remind yourself of what's in the OSHA report so
Okay.
that you're not caught out.
So it's in here?
No, I'll make sure you have a copy,
Okay.
all right?
Yeah, I don't think
I'll
he had it,
make
Mr. Chairman. I
I
think
shall make sure you have a copy, all right? And you can
Thanks.
have that as a bit of lunchtime reading.
All right.
All right, we'll break for now. Yes, we'll break for now.